Yeah. Welcome to WPL's virtual nutrition class, Tea for Health, with registered dietitian Judy Palken. Today, we will learn about the benefits of drinking tea and some of the many varieties that are available. Links to the handout, online survey, and other resources are in the chat. Welcome, Judy.
Thank you so much, Dot, and thank you everyone for coming. I am really happy to be here, back on Zoom. For those of you that I might not have met, I'm a registered dietitian and I love to talk about healthy behaviors and healthy foods, and I'm speaking to you from my home in Northborough. So today's topic is tea for health, and I hope to talk about several different aspects of tea, and maybe when I'm done, you'll be inspired to go get a cup of tea if you don't have one in front of you already. Okay, this is what I want to talk about. Just make it so I can see it better. The health benefits of tea, and there are many. The different types of tea. I want to give you some advice for getting more of this fantastic beverage into your life, if that's what you want to do. And I want to show you some amazing, beautiful tea art. I'm actually going to start with some of the tea art. I'm just, astounded by how many beautiful paintings there are of having to do with tea. And something has inspired a lot of artists to paint paintings with tea or people having tea together as a focus. And maybe that's because there's such beautiful rituals around tea, or maybe it's because it's just such a pervasive part of many people's lives. So this is by Henri Rousseau, who was a French post-impressionist painter. He went by the nickname Le Douanier, which means something like the customs officer, because he also, in addition to painting, worked as a toll collector and a tax collector. That was kind of his day job. He was actually ridiculed by the critics during his life for painting in this manner. It's called a primitive or naive manner, but since his death, he's been appreciated for being a genius artist. The next three paintings I'm going to show you are all by Mary Cassatt. You may be familiar with Mary Cassatt. She is remarkable for being the only American to exhibit with the Impressionists in Paris. She went over when she was young, and she became friends with Edgar Degas, who invited her to exhibit with the Impressionists, and she was really good. She had a theme of painting the lives of women like this, and also mother and child together. A lot of her paintings had to do with that, soft, gentle topics. So this is actually Mary Cassatt's sister, Lydia, in her elegant pink gown, drinking a cup of tea. This is another by Mary Cassatt. This was Mary Cassatt's mother's first cousin, so I guess a first cousin once removed to Mary. Just beautiful. I think especially the depiction of the china, but it's just beautiful. And finally, also by Mary Cassatt, the tea. This is at our own MFA in Boston. You could go see it. So this, I did a little reading about it. I think it's beautiful. It shows two women having tea in what was a typical luxurious Parisian apartment for that era. And it's been criticized. This painting received a lot of criticism for a couple reasons. The creamer and sugar are very large, maybe larger than they normally would have been. And some say that the sugar bowl seems to be floating in air. I'm not sure I agree with that, but that's what they say. And also that the woman on the right has the teacup covering a good part of her face, I guess was very unusual. And here's one by Renoir. Renoir famously said, "Why shouldn't art be pretty? There are enough unpleasant things in the world." So he could have said that today. So we can all maybe take a break from that and enjoy a nice cup of tea like these people are in that beautiful outdoor setting. Okay, so moving on to some facts about tea. True tea comes from one kind of plant. It's called Camellia Sinensis. This is the true tea plant. It's also called the tea shrub or the tea tree. It grows to different sizes depending on what they're trying to get from it. But it's an evergreen plant that's cultivated around the world in tropical and subtropical regions. And tea is an outstanding beverage choice. It's rich in what are called catechins, which are phytochemicals that have strong antioxidant activity. They scavenge free radicals, so they help to protect our cells, and they're also anti-inflammatory. And tea also has other phytochemicals called quercetin and polyphenols that are also good for cardiovascular health. It's got a bit of caffeine, although not as much as a cup of coffee of the same size. It's got tannins and various minerals in small amounts. If you look at a lot of the data, it seems that green tea has more antioxidant activity than black tea, and green tea seems to have the most benefit, although there is benefit to all types of tea from this plant, including black tea. So I want to take a look at some of the medical conditions and illnesses that we might benefit from with regard to drinking tea. So cardiovascular disease. Green tea and black tea consumption are associated with a reduced risk of heart disease and stroke. And in particular, the catechins in green tea can help to reduce waist circumference, LDL cholesterol, and blood pressure, which are all, when these are high, they're all risk factors for cardiovascular disease. Type 2 diabetes, which you may know is like an epidemic in our society, tea consumption may help to prevent type 2 diabetes. It may boost insulin activity, and it is associated with a lowered fasting blood sugar and a lowered hemoglobin A1C, which is the long-term measure of elevated blood sugar. So for anyone who's concerned, who has pre-diabetes or diabetes, drinking tea is a really good idea. There may be some benefit with regard to weight loss. Those catechins may affect energy metabolism and help to decrease bacteria in the gut that are associated with obesity and increase the bacteria associated with lean body mass. So in other words, tea might actually help with our microbiome. Now, we're not going to, achieve weight loss goals by just drinking tea. We have to, if someone's trying to lose weight, you also have to look at your eating behaviors and your physical activity, but drinking tea can be part of a really good plan for controlling weight. Cognitive health. Daily tea consumption seems to offer protection from cognitive decline. This is due to the catechins and a substance called L-theanine that may help with brain function. So that's very exciting. Parkinson's disease. Tea consumption is associated with a decreased risk. Osteoporosis, as we talked about in the last class at the library, green tea might help improve bone mineral density and reduce the risk of fracture, due again to those antioxidant, anti-inflammatory compounds. And rheumatoid arthritis. There's an association between tea drinking and improved physical function. Not surprising because rheumatoid arthritis is an inflammatory disease. So the tea has all those good anti-inflammatory compounds. Viral illnesses. There have been several studies that have shown a lower incidence of the flu in people who drink a higher intake of green tea. So that's encouraging. And of course, we have to take protective measures against viruses. We know that. But drinking tea, I think, can be a sensible part of our strategy. And dental health. And this is so exciting because it's so important to take good care of our teeth. The polyphenols in tea may help to decrease the risk of caries, which are cavities, and periodontal disease. And, excuse me, I don't have a slide for it, but one other thing regarding various types of cancer, there are several studies that show that the compounds in tea might help to decrease the risk of certain types of cancer due to the way they protect the cells. So exciting and really good reasons from a health standpoint to make tea a part of your diet and a part of your life. So I want to go back to this tea plant, the Camellia Sinensis. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, true tea, whenever you have a real cup of tea, it's derived from the leaves of this plant. And I remember being really surprised when I learned that several years ago. I just would have assumed that white tea and green tea and black tea all came from different plants, but they come from this plant, and which one results depends on how much the leaves have been exposed to air and oxidized. And I'm going to explain what each one is in a minute. And in the case of the final one, Puare Tea, there's also some fermentation going on. So if you look at these from top to bottom, they're the least processed, the white tea going down to the most processed. But processing in this case isn't necessarily a bad thing. All of these teas are really healthful for us. So white tea, as shown by this box of Twinings pure white tea, is the least processed. It's totally unoxidized. It's made from unopened plant buds and young leaves from the tea plant. Green tea is produced from freshly harvested leaves, and they are immediately steamed to prevent oxidation. All Japanese tea and most Chinese tea is green tea. So this is just a box of Bigelow green tea bags that you could buy in a supermarket. You might think the next one would be black tea, because as I think I kind of alluded to, those leaves are oxidized. But there's something in between green tea and black tea, and that is Oolong Tea. The leaves are partially oxidized, so they're allowed to oxidize for a short period of time. I'm not sure I've tried Oolong Tea. If you enjoy it and you want to say anything about it, please put it in the chat box and tell us why you drink it and why you like it or not. I'd be interested in knowing. Then comes black tea, which might be the one that we all grew up with and we're most familiar with. This is just Lipton black tea. The leaves are exposed to air and totally oxidized, still a healthy beverage. And then finally, this one, I realize some people might not have heard of. There's Puare Tea. This is a dark tea, fully oxidized and fermented by anaerobic bacteria, which is bacteria that doesn't need oxygen to do what it does. You can buy it either compressed into a cake, as is shown here, or loose, like in this box of Numi Puare Tea. So if you buy it compressed, like in this cake shown here, I have seen those in like specialty tea shops, and they're big. So I think you get many, many, many cups of tea out of that. And they sell a tea needle, which is a little utensil for breaking it up and accessing the tea leaves. Of course, I imagine you don't need that. I imagine you could use something like a fork or a knife. But I think I think there's a ritual to this that is important to many people. And honestly, I have not tried this and I'm very anxious to. So I saw that you can buy it on Amazon. I would prefer to go to a good tea shop and buy it there. So I intend to do that. If you drink this and you like it or don't like it, tell us about it. We'd love to know. So those are the main types of tea from the Camellia Sinensis plant. But then there are endless variations on what people do with those types of tea. So I want to explain some of those. And I'm going to start with matcha tea. And I bet some of you enjoy matcha tea. Matcha tea, and this is just a canister that I bought at the supermarket. I got this at Wegmans. You can buy it in lots of supermarkets. It's a finely ground powder made from green tea leaves that have been grown in the shade. So it looks like maybe cocoa powder, except instead of being brown, it's green. It's the only tea in which the leaves are consumed as part of the drink, rather than infused in hot water. So you're actually drinking the whole tea leaf. Therefore, you get a much greater antioxidant content, and that we can safely say is a really good thing. So this is a really healthy beverage to have. So I do want to say a little bit more about it. Here in the US, not surprisingly, with our highly processed food intake, we consume it mostly in sweetened drinks, like lattes, milkshakes, frappes, things like that, as is shown here, as what you see here pictured as a Starbucks green tea beverage. So if you are ordering something with matcha in it out in a coffee shop, ask the barista about added sugars and syrups if you're concerned about that, and ask to have it minimized or left out if that is your preference. But my recommendation is you buy it for home use. When you purchase it, check the ingredients, because there are some mixes out there that have added sugar, and ideally you just want the tea. And give yourself a great boost of antioxidants. You can add it to smoothies, you can add it to oatmeal, yogurt, salad dressings, pretty much anything you can think of. You can add it when you're baking. You can make your own lattes. I've been playing around with that and with oat milk, and it's really good. So I would urge you to give that a try.
Judy, we do have a question.
Sure.
Someone wants to know, Brian wants to know, does matcha have more caffeine?
You know, I don't know the exact caffeine content compared to a cup of green tea that you just steeped in the normal fashion and then took the leaves out. So I don't want to say that I know for sure when I don't, but I'm going to speculate that it has more because you're consuming the whole thing. You're not throwing away part of it. So Brian, I think it was Brian, what I would urge you to do is we can all just look that up. And I also will say, I wanted to make you a table of the caffeine content of different teas. And there's unfortunately so much conflicting information out there about the caffeine content of different teas that I gave up on that. So let's just go with tea's got caffeine, unless you buy the decaf, then it has very little caffeine, and it's got less than coffee. I hope that's helpful, even though it doesn't entirely answer the question. Next is flavored teas. So you can take tea, whether it's green or black or oolong, and you can flavor it with all different kinds of fruit or ginger. So back to this slide, a classic example of flavored tea and a favorite for many people is Earl Grey. So Earl Grey is a blend of black teas flavored with oil of bergamot, which is a citrus fruit. And I just read today about Lady Grey tea, which I've never seen, but it sounds good. It's similar to Earl Grey, but it has not only the bergamot, but also flavored with just plain orange. So that sounds really delicious to me. Then as you can see, here's raspberry peach tea and pomegranate tea, and all these are real teas, black tea in many cases, that are flavored with some kind of fruit extract. Nothing wrong with that, perfectly good to enjoy. Then there's scented tea, a popular variety being jasmine, where the jasmine petals are rubbed onto the tea leaves. It's another one I haven't tried. I have a lot of tea to try, but sounds interesting. Sounds like it might be a nice aromatic experience. There's mint tea. Now this is opposed to just if you take some mint leaves and put it in some hot water, which is perfectly great. But this is black tea that also is mixed with mint leaves. Sometimes there's sugar added, so you want to be on the lookout for that if you're concerned about that. But mint is a great addition to tea. There's smoked tea, often called lapsang souchong. Hope I'm not mispronouncing that too badly. So smoked tea is black tea that's been smoke dried over a pine wood fire. I'm going to recommend that you not make this your daily choice of tea. I definitely think it sounds like fun to try, but just like we shouldn't be eating lots and lots of smoked foods on a regular basis, there's some compounds that may be carcinogenic if we have them in very large amounts. I'm thinking maybe this isn't the best choice of tea to have on a daily basis. And then there's chai. And sometimes we say chai tea. I've myself said chai tea, except it turns out that chai means tea in Hindi. So if we're saying chai tea, we're actually saying tea tea. which is okay, we can forgive that. Chai is wonderful. It's you can buy mixes or you could just do it yourself. It's usually black tea and it will have some additions. So it can be milk, which is very often whole milk, sugar, which is very often white sugar, cinnamon, cloves, fennel, cardamom, peppercorns, ginger, star anise, and I'm sure there's other great aromatic herbs and spices that people add. So this can be an extremely nutritious choice because what do we know about herbs and spices? They also have lots of anti-inflammatory, antioxidant compounds. So this could be a really good healthy choice, watching out for the amount of sugar, I will say. So, you know, some of the chai mixes that are sold are just mostly sugar. It would be better to make this up on your own. You can throw a cinnamon stick and some cloves into your cup of tea. You can even put a little sugar in, but not the amount that, for example, Trader Joe's is going to do. And then there's kombucha. Maybe you've seen this and been puzzled by it. Maybe you are a big fan, but I'm going to explain it just in case you don't know about it. Kombucha is a fermented tea. It's a fermented beverage made from tea, sugar, bacteria, and yeast. It will have sugar because that's there to feed the little bugs, the bacteria and the yeast. They ferment it and give it a special flavor. This is the kombucha refrigerator at Wegmans. You can see there's many of them. So they're good in that they contain probiotics, beneficial bacteria and yeast, good for our microbiome. There is very limited evidence for any of the health claims that go along with kombucha. And it does have a fair amount of added sugar by definition. So I'm not going to recommend it as the healthiest choice, even though it does have those good bacteria. You will find it sold, blended into coffees, cocktails, juices, even things like cupcake frosting. It is very trendy. So try it for fun, enjoy it if you like it, but I wouldn't think of it as your healthiest beverage choice. And by the way, it's also really expensive. I looked at several of these and they go for $3 and up per little serving, per container. So that could get to be a really expensive habit if you decided to have them every day. More about kombucha. This is what it requires to make it. And some people enjoy making it on their own. You have to have a SCOBY. A SCOBY that stands for symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast. And you can see in this photo what's kind of half submerged in the tea and then what's floating on the top. That is actually cakes of bacteria and yeast. And that's fine. I mean, it's a little odd if you're not used to that, but it's fine and it's totally edible. It's sometimes referred to as the mother or the mushroom because it looks like a mushroom. So yeah, there you have it.
Yeah, we have a question. What about alcohol in kombucha? This person heard it generates an alcohol content?
My understanding is it does have a little alcohol. Yes. I don't know that it's enough that anybody would feel the effects of it. But if you know differently than me, if anybody drinks this and has noticed the effects of the alcohol in the tea, please let us know, because I would like to know that. But yeah, part of the fermentation process. Here's another one that I'm not recommending as much as just putting up here because I think it's fascinating. I actually didn't know about this until a few years ago. I learned about it from a couple people on one of my classes. I'm always learning from you. Southern sweet tea, which is a part of the food and beverage culture in the South. So it's tea that is prepared with a lot of sugar. I've got a recipe here that I'm not putting here intending that you should make it, just as an example. It's got a cup of sugar for, how much? I just want to see how many gallons. It's either how much water. Yeah, you're making a gallon of the tea with a cup of sugar. That's a lot of sugar. And the author of the blog did point out that this makes a fairly mild tea. It's not that sweet, so add more sugar if you want to. So again, I'm not recommending this any more than I'm recommending going out and having a Coke. It's just a lot of sugar, but I do understand culturally a lot of people enjoy this and, you know, like serving it to their guests and so on. So I'm going to spend a couple minutes now talking about herb tea, because I suspect that many of you really like your herbal teas, and there are some wonderful ones out there. And I want to explain what that means and if there's, you know, if there's a reason to drink those. So herbal teas are the ones that are not from Camellia Sinensis. They're from other plants, and they can be almost any part of a plant. It can be the leaves, the flowers, the roots, the seeds, the bark. I like to throw fennel seeds in a cup of water that I've boiled, or maybe some citrus peel. I guess I can consider that to be an herbal tea. Many of these, oh, and by the way, tisane, that's the French word, that's French for herbal teas. I guess these are very popular in France. Many of them have unproven claims, but there truly are some benefits to having some of them. And this is what I know of. They have good phytochemicals in their own right. Plants have chemical compounds that are good for us. So if you have them from other, you know, other fruits and other twigs and leaves, those can also be very good for us. It's good for hydration. Many of us don't drink enough water throughout the day, and maybe having an herbal tea is an appealing way for you to get more water. They contain very few, if any, calories, unless of course you're adding a lot of stuff to them. And finally, it's fun to grow your own herbs. And if you're concerned about pesticides and things you don't want being on your tea leaves, you can just grow your own herbs on your windowsill or out on your front stoop and make tea out of them. For example, mint, and that can be very satisfying and very delicious. So I encourage you to have them in addition to regular true tea. The effects of herbal teas are likely to be mild, but still, you might notice them and you might enjoy them. So shown here, the images are elderberries and peppermint leaves, and those are two of the things we might want to make herbal tea from. So chamomile is known for being relaxing, and it may help to promote sleep. Hibiscus may lower blood pressure and lower blood cholesterol. Elderberry may help with colds and flu. Cinnamon may help to lower blood sugar. Ginger relieves nausea and vomiting. And peppermint can aid in digestion and may help to relieve irritable bowel syndrome. If you've noticed any benefit from these or any other herbal teas, please let us know. Put it in the chat box. I just think this is a beautiful painting from Janet Fish. She's an American contemporary artist, still painting as far as I know. And this is herb tea. And she is really good with depicting the interaction of light with objects. And you can see the light kind of going through the tea and going through the glass here, just beautiful. So now I want to give you some tea advice in case you're thinking about how you can get some more into your life. So first of all, you want to do it as healthfully as possible. Drink freshly brewed tea. There have been scientists that have looked at the popular bottled teas, like the ones that you might buy in a I don't know, a Cumberland Farms or in the supermarket. They contain fewer polyphenolic compounds, some of those really beneficial compounds, than home brewed tea. Now, this is not to say you shouldn't make a pot of tea and then drink from it for a day or two, but if the tea's been sitting around for weeks or months, the really good phytochemicals start to degrade and you're not getting nearly as much benefit. So brew tea often. Here's a nice Van Gogh sketch showing a tea kettle. By the Age of Enlightenment, and this is after the beginning of that, but by the Age of Enlightenment, almost everybody in Europe was drinking tea. It took over after coffee as the most popular beverage. And so probably every home had some version of a kettle like this. I don't know, I wish I knew, but I'm speculating that this was Van Gogh's very own tea kettle. And here's what looks to be possibly the same tea kettle, also Van Gogh, same year. And one of the things I love about this sketch, nothing to do with tea, but if you look in the upper right, look how he's included a print, except it's hanging sideways. I have no idea why, we'll never know, but he must have had some reason. I just think that's so quirky and so charming. Drink tea throughout the day. There's no reason not to, especially if you enjoy it. So why not be giving yourself a boost of those antioxidants throughout the day? Really important, this one. When we go about, it's a really good idea to take a water bottle for many reasons. We can stay hydrated that way. Let's say you're running errands and you're going to be out for hours. It's important to keep drinking and getting fluid. Why not add a tea bag? It will steep even in cold water and you'll get those beneficial compounds. And it also saves you money by not feeling you have to buy a beverage. And it helps the environment because that's one less potential water bottle that's going into the trash or wherever they go. When you travel, it's a good idea to pack your tea. Have a little case or something and just pack your favorite tea bags. I like this also because you know how sometimes you get to another town or another state or even country and you don't like the taste of the water. The water might be safe, but it's just not appealing to you because it's not what you're used to. Throwing a tea bag in the water will completely mask the taste so you can just enjoy your water and again, not have to purchase water. Be creative with those tea bags or your loose tea. So even if you are not really one to drink a cup of tea, you might want to get the health benefits by adding tea to other foods and beverages that you're having. So for example, you can add tea leaves to smoothies. If you add just a little, you won't even taste it. And if you add a lot, if you enjoy the flavor of tea, you can have a tea chocolate flavored smoothie or tea strawberry or whatever it is you like. You can add tea leaves to soup that you're cooking. You can add it to baked goods. You can add it to the water for cooking grains. And you can create your own lattes. If you do anything creative with tea, let us know. Put it in the chat box. Here's a recipe for a smoothie. And smoothies are very forgiving. So I've included this on the handout, but you can change it if you want to use different fruits or something besides parsley if you don't have parsley. But basically, it's got the parsley, it's got the fruit, it's got a little bit of nuts, and then it's got some loose green tea. So I call it antioxidant smoothie because it's got all those wonderful, healthy ingredients, and it does taste good. Avoid those tea beverages that are high in sugar. On balance, you're not doing yourself any favor. You are getting, again, not very many of those great tea antioxidants, but generally you're getting a lot of sugar. So thumbs down to these, thumbs up to you bringing your own tea in a water bottle. Those fancy tea bags that started showing up several years ago, and they're in a lot of coffee shops and even some restaurants, they tend to be shaped like a pyramid, and they're made out of nylon, and they are bad news. They leach billions of microplastics into every single cup. There have been plenty of articles about this. Nylon is in fact made from petroleum. So it's made of what plastic is made out of. And I am very aware that we're all getting lots of microplastics because of the way the world is now and plastic is breaking down in our oceans. But why add even more to that every time we drink a cup of tea? This is a real pet peeve of mine, so much so that when I see it in a coffee shop, I asked to speak to someone and I explained to them what it is they're selling and would they please stop doing it. And I have sent tea back because of this. I just don't want it. And I urge you to do the same thing. I can't say that anybody has taken my advice on this, the coffee shops, but I'm going to keep trying. It's really wrong. It's really wrong to be putting these little nylon bags into a cup of boiling water.
Judy, can we interrupt? Just seeing you talking about coffee shops. Somebody asked, Rita asked if you could recommend any local specialty tea shops.
It's funny that you included specialty there. Special Teas in Northborough is a lovely place. It's in an old Victorian, I believe it was a home at one time, and they have many different wonderful teas on the menu. You can go in there for tea. You can also get a nice lunch, a nice afternoon tea. They have desserts out. So I highly recommend them. Of course, consider what you add to your tea because, you know, we should add what we want to our tea, but the more sugar you add, or if you're adding something like cream, the less of a healthy beverage you're making it. So I would urge moderation. You want to enjoy your tea, you know, and have it with what you want in it, but I would be moderate with the amount of added sweetener if you're having a lot of tea. And my final two bits of advice are, again, concerned with the planet. If you're going out for tea, just like if you're going out for coffee, consider bringing your own cup. Coffee shops at this point, and also places that sell tea, should be used to this. It's fine if they're serving it to you in a china or ceramic cup, but I'm concerned about the single-use cups that just get thrown away and discarded and ending up in our waterways and so on. So bring your own cup. They should be very accommodating with filling that with tea. And if you can, if you have the ability, compost your tea leaves, just like hopefully you compost, if you can, other plant matter. You can, some people have a composting service. Some people, like me, just compost it in their yard, but tea bags or just loose tea are fine to go in a compost pile. And your other plants will thank you for it. Oh, this is just, I don't expect you to be able to read this, but I just wanted to show you, these are 2 pages from The Joy of Cooking. And you'll probably find this kind of thing in many cookbooks. The ritual around making tea and the instructions are just so precise and so long in this case. It goes on for like almost 2 pages. Of course, you don't need to do that. You can just make tea the way you're used to making tea, but tea is such an important ritual for so many people. And in some cultures, doing it exactly right is very important. So I was just intrigued to find this in The Joy of Cooking. So tea is a simple pleasure that for many of us is the time of day when we have a cup of tea that we get to sit down and relax and maybe just do some thinking or reading or planning or maybe socializing with someone else. So part of the importance of tea is just that simple pleasure and relaxing time that it gives us. One more painting or maybe 2 more paintings. This is André Derain. He was a French painter, and this could be any of us, this lady relaxing with her cup of tea, presumably maybe at the end of the day, reading her book and just enjoying her tea. Such a nice thing to do. And by the way, I did also want to mention that for some of us who may be trying to cut back on desserts, having that cup of tea after dinner can be a way that maybe we're offering ourselves something really nice without it having to be a dessert some of the time. I don't know if anyone else has had that experience where the tea can kind of take the place a little bit. One more painting. This is Jackson Pollock. the teacup. Does anyone see the teacup in there? Let me know if you do. I don't really, I just think it's a charming painting. I'm not exactly sure where the teacup is. And that is what I have planned for you. We have a little time, so if anybody does want to either say or write in the chat box your experience with tea, what you like, what you may be planning on trying to get more tea in your life, please chime in. I would love to hear you.
We do have one question. Oh, sorry. Does decaf tea have the same benefits?
Oh, really good question. No, I was surprised to learn that, and I meant to mention that. And I too buy decaf tea. I see a couple of people maybe nodding. Decaf tea is certainly going to have some benefit. And one of those benefits is, of course, less caffeine if you're drinking it at 10 o'clock at night. But it turns out that with the caffeine go some of the antioxidant strength, those compounds go too. I was disappointed to learn that. So I think as much as possible, if you can tolerate the caffeine, go for the regular tea. That might mean drinking it earlier in the day. Or maybe you, like me, I find that I don't notice the caffeine in tea very much the way I notice it in coffee. I don't know why that is. Maybe because there's just not as much. But that's an excellent question.
Yeah. Someone mentioned that there's a tea shop in Upton called Upton Tea Imports. A couple participants have been there and they love it.
Thank you.
And Brian wants to know, oh, can he see the smoothie slide again? He didn't get the measurements down. He also wants to know, what range does tea have regarding caffeine?
So the range, again, it's hard to know because I saw so many conflicting numbers out there, but it's well below 100 milligrams in an 8-ounce cup of tea. Whoops, that's not it. Sorry. Here it is. It's, I can't remember if it might be around 60 milligrams or 40 milligrams per cup of tea. But it was in that ballpark, again, with a lot of conflicting numbers out there, which I can kind of understand because people steep their tea differently and for different amounts of time. So that's going to have an impact too. If you steep it really quickly and take the tea bag out, it's not going to have as much caffeine, or it's not, and it's also not going to be as flavorful, but that might be what you want at 6 o'clock in the evening when you don't want too much caffeine.
And Judy wants to know, does old tea lose its health benefits along with taste?
Yeah, are you now? I don't know if you're referring to like the tea that's in the bottles, like the commercially prepared teas. Definitely loses its health benefits. The antioxidant compounds break down. Now, if it's old in that it's sitting in your refrigerator because you're reusing the tea bags and you're using them for a couple days, which I know sometimes people do, that I don't know. I don't want to say I know when I don't. I don't know if that loses a lot of health benefit over a period of a couple days.
Yeah, this is Judy. My question is more along the lines of old tea bags that kind of sit on the shelf maybe for a year. Is that too long to wreak any health benefits from?
I don't know. I haven't, in all the reading I did about tea, I did not see anything that mentioned that it loses its health benefits. And I also haven't looked, but I should, on a box of tea like Lipton or Bigelow or whatever, if there's an expiration date. So I'm going to check on that, and maybe you can do that too.
Yes, thank you.
And then just like with everything else, if there is a date and it's beyond that date, maybe consider that's not the best one.
Sure, thank you.
Good point. Thank you, Judy.
Can I just make a quick comment? Upton Tea is actually not a brick and mortar. It is an online store. They're fabulous. I have been buying tea from them for years. I am a tea drinker, not a coffee drinker. And I make a fresh pot of loose tea every morning. But now with what you said about that smoked tea,